In 1897, the territory of Crete wanted independence from the Ottoman Empire. Believing in self-determination, the Greek military went into Crete to liberate it. They hoped for a quick victory, but they were crushed by Ottoman forces in just 30 days. The outcome of the war was more surprising though. Other European powers intervened in favor of Greece, forcing the Ottomans to surrender control of Crete. It was a time when Christian nations were trying everything to weaken the Ottoman Empire, which they often referred to as the sick man of Europe. There has always been some tension between Vietnam and China, but it really escalated in the 1970s. The whole thing is strange because both countries were communist. The war began when Vietnam invaded Cambodia, which was also a communist nation. The Chinese saw this as a Soviet plot against them and declared war on Vietnam, so it was a huge loop of communist conspiracies. There was no official winner of the war, with both sides claiming victory. Chinese forces withdrew after 27 days. This allowed Vietnam to continue their action against the Cambodian government, who they overthrew. In 1918, Armenia and Georgia went to war over territorial disputes. This wasn't long after they achieved independence from the Soviet Union. For 1 month, they were both part of a newly formed country, but that didn't work out, and territorial disputes followed. After 24 days of fighting, the British Prime Minister brokered a ceasefire, with both sides agreeing not to enter disputed land. Both Armenia and Georgia were soon recaptured by the Soviets. So really, it was a pointless conflict. In 1885, Bulgaria was unified into one country. Serbia was against this as it meant they had a new power rival. They would rather be surrounded by a bunch of small countries which could easily be dominated. Serbian forces were sent to break up Bulgaria, but they were defeated in 14 days in a pretty embarrassing fashion, especially considering Bulgaria basically didn't have a military yet. Most other countries recognized Bulgaria after their victory. Relations between Pakistan and India have really never been good. Thanks to territorial disputes, they've gone to war 4 times. In 1971, Bangladesh was still part of Pakistan. Bangladeshi rebels wanted independence, so a war broke out. Pakistan was worried that India would get involved, so they launched preemptive airstrikes on Indian military bases. The goal was to gain a quick advantage, but it didn't work. The Indian military swiftly crushed them, and Bangladesh was granted independence after just 13 days. Surprisingly, the 10-day war lasted 10 days. It's also known as the Slovenian War of Independence. At the time, Slovenia was part of a big communist country called Yugoslavia, but they didn't want to be. Yugoslavia was bloated and weak, so it only took 10 days. Other countries followed in Slovenia's footsteps, with Croatia declaring independence, and then Bosnia. Yugoslavia no longer exists. In 2008, Georgia was making strong ties with the West. The Russian government was obviously opposed to this. To stop Georgia from joining NATO, they invaded. Georgia is a very small country with a military to match, so Russia was victorious in just 6 days. Russian forces then left most of the country, as they'd done enough to scare the Georgian government. They still control some Georgian lands today, which I don't think they'll be giving back. The Six-Day War changed Middle Eastern history in less than a week. In the late 1960s, the Arab states were preparing for a war with Israel, so Israel launched a preemptive attack on Egypt. This took the Arab states by surprise, allowing Israel to capture new territory. They took territory from Egypt, Syria and Jordan, and still occupy much of it. It's one of the most controversial episodes in their history, but it's hard to deny the efficiency of the Israeli military. A lot of people would not include this one, but I think it counts. It's the overthrow of the Kingdom of Hawaii. Before joining the Union, Hawaii was an independent kingdom ruled by a monarchy. Before they could annex the islands, the monarchy would need to be overthrown. So America invaded and overthrew their government. It took less than a day, as Hawaii basically had no military. Their queen was forced to surrender her power, and Hawaii was the last American territory to become a state. This next one lasted less than 40 minutes. It was 1896, and Zanzibar was an independent kingdom. Their sultan had very close ties to the British Empire, but he died, and an anti-British sultan took his place. The British demanded he abdicate in favor of a different sultan. He responded by barricading himself inside the palace with his military. The British military was sent in, and the sultan surrendered in under 40 minutes. The casualties on the Zanzibar side was 500 dead or injured, and the casualties on the British side was 1 injury. Zanzibar was then absorbed into the empire.